My husband stood there, whispering in another woman's ear like I didn't exist. I watched him laugh, touch her arm, completely disrespecting our marriage, but when his so-called best friend smirked and said, "Your turn is over, she's with me now," everything changed. What happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't believe how this unfolds. Drop a comment and let me know if you've ever had to deal with a cheating partner. Now, let me tell you what really went down that night. My name is Nicole, and I thought I had it all figured out. I was 34 years old, working as a marketing director at a firm downtown, making good money, living in a beautiful house in the suburbs. And I was married to Terrence, the man I thought was my soulmate. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 6 of those, and on the surface, everything looked perfect. People used to tell us we were couple goals. They'd see us at church on Sundays, at cookouts in the summer, always smiling, always together. But lately, something had shifted. Terrence worked in real estate, and he was good at it. Charismatic, smooth-talking, the kind of man who could sell ice to someone living in Alaska. That charm was what attracted me to him in the first place. But over the past few months, that same charm started showing up at odd hours. He'd come home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. He'd be on his phone constantly, tilting the screen away whenever I walked into the room. When I asked him about it, he'd get defensive, tell me I was being paranoid, that I needed to trust him more. I wanted to believe him. God knows I tried, but my gut kept screaming at me that something wasn't right. Women's intuition is real, and mine was working overtime. Still, I didn't have proof, and I wasn't about to accuse my husband of cheating without evidence, so I watched, I waited, and I paid attention. Then came the invitation to Andre's birthday party. Andre was Terrence's best friend since college, or at least that's what Terrence always said. Personally, I never liked Andre. He was one of those men who had money and made sure everyone knew it. Flashy cars, expensive watches, always talking about his next business venture or investment property. He was single, loved to party, and had a different woman on his arm every time we saw him. Terrence looked up to him, almost idolized him, and that always bothered me. But I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to be that wife who complained about her husband's friends. When Terrence told me about the party, he was more excited than I'd seen him in months. His eyes lit up. He was already planning what he was going to wear, talking about who would be there. I was hesitant. The last thing I wanted was to spend my Saturday night at some loud party with people I barely knew, but Terrence insisted. He said we needed to get out more, that I'd been working too hard, that it would be good for us. Looking back now, I realize he wasn't asking me to go for us. He had other reasons. I decided if I was going to this party, I was going to look absolutely stunning. I pulled out my red dress, the one that hugged every curve, the one that made me feel powerful and beautiful. I did my makeup flawlessly, curled my hair just right, put on my best heels. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who deserved respect, who deserved loyalty, who deserved better than what she'd been getting. The party was at some upscale venue downtown, the kind of place with mood lighting and a DJ and bottles of champagne that cost more than most people's car payments. When we walked in, the music was pounding. People were everywhere, dressed to impress, laughing and dancing and living their best lives. Terrence held my hand as we walked in, but the moment we got through the door, I felt him tense up. His eyes were scanning the room like he was looking for someone, and then he found her, Angela. She was standing near the bar in a gold dress that looked like it had been painted on her body. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. 28, maybe younger, with long hair and a smile that could stop traffic. The moment Terrence saw her, something changed in his face. It was like I disappeared, like I wasn't even standing right next to him, holding his hand. He made some weak excuse about needing to network, about seeing some potential clients he needed to talk to. He kissed me on the cheek, told me to get a drink and mingle, and then he was gone. Just like that. Left me standing there in my red dress, watching him walk straight over to Angela like a moth to a flame. I'm not a fool. I've been around long enough to know what attraction looks like, but this wasn't just attraction. This was something else. This was familiarity. The way he touched her arm, leaned in close to whisper in her ear, the way she laughed and tilted her head back, putting her hand on his chest. They looked like a couple. They looked like people who had done this before. My heart was pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to march over there and cause a scene, snatch him away from her and demand answers. But I didn't. I stood there, watching, keeping my composure even though I felt like my world was crumbling around me. Other people at the party started to notice too. I could see them whispering, looking from me to Terrence and Angela, then quickly looking away when I caught their eyes. The pity on their faces made me feel sick. I got myself a glass of wine and positioned myself where I could see them, but they couldn't see me watching. For the next hour, I watched my husband disrespect me in front of all these people. He had his hand on her lower back. He was whispering things that made her giggle. At one point, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. My husband, the man who vowed to love and cherish me, the man who stood in front of our families and God and promised to be faithful. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I walked over to where they were standing, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, my head held high even though I was dying inside. When I reached them, Terrence barely looked at me. Angela had this smirk on her face, like she knew exactly what she was doing and she was enjoying every second of it. "Terrence," I said, keeping my voice steady, "can we talk?" He sighed, annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. "Nicole, I'm just talking. Relax. This is Angela. We're discussing a property deal." A property deal, at 10 o'clock at night, at a birthday party, with his hand on her hip. Did he really think I was that stupid? Angela didn't even try to hide her smile. She looked me up and down, then looked back at Terrence like I was some kind of inconvenience. I could have pressed it. I could have demanded he come with me, made a scene, called him out right there, but something told me to wait. Something told me to just watch and see how this played out. So I smiled, nodded, and walked away. But I didn't go far. I stayed close enough to keep an eye on them, far enough away that they thought I'd given up. And that's when Andre showed up. He was already drunk, you could tell by the way he was walking, swaying slightly, that cocky grin plastered on his face. He was wearing an expensive suit, a gold chain around his neck, looking like he owned the world. He walked right up to Terrence and Angela, and I watched as he slid his arm around her waist, pulling her away from my husband. Terrence's face changed immediately. The smooth, confident expression dropped. He looked confused, then shocked, then angry. Angela didn't move away from Andre. Instead, she leaned into him, put her hand on his chest, smiled up at him like he was the only man in the room. That's when I heard it. Andre's voice, loud enough for people nearby to hear, dripping with arrogance and cruelty. "Your turn is over, man. She's with me now." Time stopped. I watched Terrence's mouth fall open, watched him try to process what was happening. Angela laughed, actually laughed, and confirmed what Andre had just said. She'd been seeing Andre for weeks. Terrence was just something to do while Andre was busy with work. Entertainment. A distraction. Nothing serious. The humiliation on Terrence's face would have been satisfying if it wasn't happening in public. If it wasn't a reflection of how little he'd thought about humiliating me just moments before. He tried to stammer out a response, tried to save face, but Andre wasn't done. He was enjoying this. "What, you thought you could play in my league?" Andre said, laughing. "Man, you work for me. You're my agent. You really thought a woman like Angela would choose you over me? Come on, be serious." And then Andre dropped the real bomb. He started talking about money Terrence had borrowed from him. Thousands of dollars. Money that Terrence had told me was from a bonus at work. Andre announced it to everyone within earshot, telling them how Terrence owed him, how he'd been carrying Terrence financially for months. People were pulling out their phones. I could see them recording, whispering, spreading the gossip in real time. Terrence's reputation, his image, everything he'd worked so hard to build was crumbling right in front of everyone, and Angela just stood there, holding on to Andre, not even looking at Terrence anymore. That's when I made my move. I walked over, calmly, Like I was walking through a park on a Sunday afternoon. I had a fresh glass of wine in my hand, and I stood right in front of all three of them. Terrence looked at me with desperation in his eyes, probably hoping I'd defend him, save him from this humiliation. But I didn't. "Terrence," I said, my voice clear and steady, "I want you to know that I've known about this for 3 weeks now." His face went pale. Andre and Angela were watching now, curious. Everyone around us had gone quiet. "I hired a private investigator," I continued. "I have photos, text messages, hotel receipts. I know about all of it. And this morning, before we came to this party, I filed for divorce." You could hear people gasp. Terrence tried to reach for me, tried to say something, but I stepped back. "I also froze our joint accounts and contacted your boss about some irregularities I found in your client accounts. You know, the money you've been skimming? They'll be conducting an audit on Monday." Terrence looked like he might pass out. Andre's cocky smile faded a little. He was realizing that this whole situation was messier than he thought. I turned to Andre and Angela. "You two deserve each other. Have a wonderful life." And then I walked out of that party with my head held high, leaving Terrence standing there in the wreckage of his own making. The next few weeks were hard, I won't lie. Divorce is never easy, even when you know it's the right thing. But watching karma do its work made it a little easier. Terrence's real estate license got suspended because of the ethics violations. The audit found exactly what I knew they'd find, and he lost his job. Angela moved on to someone else within days, someone with even more money than Andre. And Andre? He cut Terrence off completely. Their friendship was over. No more loans, no more connections, no more hanging out. Terrence lost everything. Meanwhile, I got promoted at work. I moved into a beautiful apartment downtown, started going to therapy, started rediscovering who I was outside of being someone's wife. I started dating again, casually, taking my time. And for the first time in months, I felt at peace. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Terrence at a coffee shop. He looked different, older, tired, humbled. He was wearing a regular suit, nothing designer, working some corporate job that was nowhere near the level he used to be at. When he saw me, he looked like he wanted to run, but instead, he walked over. He apologized, said he was stupid, that he threw away the best thing in his life, that he'd do anything to have me back. He looked sincere. Maybe he even was. But I wasn't interested in going backwards. "I'm glad you're doing better," I told him. "I really am. But that chapter of my life is closed. I wish you well, Terrence, but I've moved on." And I had. Completely. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just free. So that's how karma handled my cheating husband and his backstabbing friend. They played games and lost everything. If you love this story, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe for more real-life stories about love, betrayal, and coming out stronger. Drop a comment telling me, would you have handled it differently? What would you have said to your cheating spouse? I read every single comment. Remember, your self-respect is worth more than any relationship. Until next time, stay strong and know your worth.